What if I told you that overnight, the Supreme Court just unleashed an emergency order that could completely reshape the Second Amendment as we know it? That's right, a single late-night move from the nation's highest court has sent shockwaves across the country, leaving millions of gun owners, lawmakers, and even constitutional scholars scrambling for answers. This isn't a drill, and it's not business as usual. The implications of this ruling reach deep, from how states enforce gun laws to whether your right to bear arms will soon look very different from what the Founding Fathers intended. But here's where things get truly controversial. This emergency decision didn't go through the normal process. No public hearings, no long deliberations, just a swift, behind-closed-doors order that's already taking effect nationwide. Some are calling it the most aggressive judicial intervention on gun rights in decades, while others believe it's a necessary correction to decades of overreach. And as always, the truth lies buried beneath layers of politics, power, and hidden agendas. So stay tuned, because in today's video, we're diving deep into what this emergency order really means, who stands to benefit, and what the media isn't telling you. But before we begin, if you're new here or haven't already hit that subscribe button and tap the like icon right now. It might sound small, but your support is everything. When you subscribe and like, it tells YouTube that this is content worth showing to more people, and it helps protect independent voices like ours from getting buried by the algorithm. Trust me, it makes a huge difference. So if you care about staying informed and seeing what's really going on behind the headlines, do it right now. It takes just a second. And as you watch, I want to hear from you in the comments. What part of this Supreme Court move shocks you the most? Is it the suddenness, the political timing, or the legal chaos it could unleash in your state? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. Because what's coming next in this video is something most Americans haven't heard yet, and I promise you, the final revelation at the end will leave you absolutely speechless. So stay with me until the very end. This one is going to change the way you see the Second Amendment forever. 1. The unprecedented emergency order. What just happened in the dead of night? The Supreme Court dropped an emergency order so sweeping it's now rewriting the battlefield for gun rights across the America we thought we knew. No traditional hearings, no extended argument, no public testimony, just a sudden judicial strike that immediately changes how the Second Amendment is enforced nationwide. Many in legal circles are calling this a judicial power grab, a seizure of constitutional authority ordinarily reserved for Congress or state legislatures. The core of this move, the court is staying or overturning injunctions in key gun rights cases, forcing states to halt restrictions or reinstate policies before full merits hearings even occur. It's as if the judiciary decided unilaterally that time is up and gun laws must adapt or collapse. What's dangerous is less the order itself than its precedent. Once the court can invoke emergencies to reshape rights, tomorrow they could do the same for speech, religion, or privacy. For gun rights advocates, it's a vindication soaked in uncertainty. For opponents, it's lawless takeover. Either way, no one can pretend the playing field is the same. 2. How this connects to the Supreme Court's recent gun agenda. This emergency order doesn't appear in a vacuum. It dovetails with a broader, aggressive gun rights agenda now being litigated at the highest levels. The court has recently agreed to hear key challenges involving Hawaii's handgun restrictions on private property, which would force states to defend carry rules under the stricter standards established in Bruin. Meanwhile, in Bondi v. Vanderstock, the court upheld ATF regulations covering so-called ghost gun kits components that could be assembled into working firearms, rejecting a facial challenge to those rules. That decision signals that even as the court expands rights, it's also drawing lines around how far that expansion goes. And looming on the docket, United States versus Hemani, where the court will decide if a federal statute barring people using illegal controlled substances from owning guns violates the Second Amendment. All this together, the emergency order is a shock tactic, but it also seems part of a broader move to cement a durable new regime for gun law, one where favorable rulings are locked in before challengers can even mount full defenses. 3. The legal firestorm. Challenges, backlash, and constitutional questions. This emergency order is drawing fierce pushback on procedural, constitutional, and practical grounds. Critics argue the court has violated fundamental norms of due process. Parties whose rights are impacted had no chance to argue, no full panel review, and no public record. Some dissenting judges point out that in-bank procedures in circuit courts are being circumvented, undermining institutional legitimacy. Indeed, in cases like Duncan versus Bonta, circuit and bank panels have been manipulated to produce outcomes favored by certain judges. Constitutionally, opponents warn a judicial overreach that the court is acting more like a legislature. This raises questions under separation of powers. Is a court allowed to impose sweeping substantive changes under the guise of emergency? Some observers argue such emergency doctrine, unmoored from strict standards, opens the door to abuse in any field of rights. On the flip side, proponents argue this order is justified by urgency. Gun laws being enforced now could cause irreparable harm to constitutional rights. But irreparable harm is precisely what due process protections exist to guard against. The tension is stark. Is emergency a valid constitutional tool or a Trojan horse for court activism? Practically, some states are already resisting. Some governors and attorneys general are promising to defy parts of the order, leading to legal standoffs between federal courts and state law enforcement. Meanwhile, lower courts are left scrambling. Do they obey the order or await clarification? Many lower judges are publicly wondering whether compliance will expose them to appeal or defiance. The result: chaos, conflicting rulings, and deep constitutional instability. 4. State and local ripples. What the emergency order means in practice. The power of this order lies in how it cascades into state and local gun laws. In many states, bans on large-capacity magazines, age restrictions, sensitive places carry prohibitions, or assault weapons rules now hang in limbo. For example, in Illinois, a federal judge recently struck down that state's ban on semi-automatic weapons, citing recent Supreme Court precedents. Could this emergency order force Illinois and other states to reopen registration or allow new sales immediately? Quite possibly in Hawaii, where a law requires concealed carry licensees to obtain property owner consent before entering private property. That statute is now headed to full Supreme Court review, and the emergency order may force interim lifting of restrictions. States that have pushed restrictive gun control, especially Democratic-leaning ones, are loudly threatening to challenge the order itself in federal court. Some are preparing to argue sovereign immunity, state nullification, or legislative countermeasures. Others may decline to enforce new orders until clarity emerges. But for gun rights proponents, the order creates a window. Enforcement might shift overnight in multiple jurisdictions. Local law enforcement agencies, too, are in a bind. Do they follow state law or the Supreme Court's emergency command? Many sheriffs and police chiefs are issuing internal memos telling officers to await guidance. All told, daily life for gun owners could shift by the hour depending on your state. 5. Winners, losers, and perilous gray zones. Not everyone stands to benefit equally from this order, and in fact, many people could find themselves perilously exposed. Gun rights groups and individual owners are obvious winners. They may see previously blocked sales or carry permissions reinstated pending litigation. But they also risk backlash. Opponents may attempt new restrictions or enforcement surges before courts intervene. But on the other side, communities vulnerable to gun violence may feel immediate consequences if restrictions they relied upon vanish suddenly, creating tension with public safety advocates. Some jurisdictions may respond with emergency local measures or policing adjustments, but those may be challenged in court. That a gray zone emerges around mid-level regulations. Background checks, waiting periods, red flag laws, or storage rules might be delayed or invalidated pending challenges if courts interpret the emergency order broadly. Regulators may be frozen in place, neither able to enforce nor amend rules without court permission. Another danger: selective enforcement. If some states comply and others resist, you'll get a patchwork of gun regimes, a fractured Second Amendment. Owners moving between states could run afoul unknowingly. Lawyers warn this invites forum shopping, inconsistent rulings, and perhaps new lawsuits over jurisdictional conflicts. In short, the emergency order's impact won't be uniform, and for many, that unpredictability is the highest risk of all. 6. What's next and the final blow that changes the game? Watch until the end. So where do we go from here? First, the Supreme Court will have to rule on the underlying cases: Hawaii's appeal, Himani, and perhaps others involving magazine bans or age restrictions. How they interpret Bruin, requiring historical analogs, will either reinforce or constrain the emergency order's precedent. Second, many lower courts will issue conflicting injunctions, stay orders, and dissents. Appeals courts will be overwhelmed. We may see circuits openly rebelling or temporary ad hoc interim orders. Third, this emergency order could inspire new shadow litigation. States or actors may challenge the emergency doctrine itself as unconstitutional, asking the court to define when, if ever, it's legitimate to override procedural norms. That here's the final revelation that will shock most Americans. Internal memos circulating inside the Supreme Court's own chambers suggest that this emergency mechanism may now become a permanent weapon, not an exception. Sources indicate the majority is considering formalizing an emergency constitutional override doctrine, letting the court, under certain internal criteria, issue binding orders that leapfrog normal process in future rights cases. If that becomes the norm, the judiciary becomes far more politicized and powerful than ever before. The emergency order you see today may just be the pilot episode in a new era where any right, not just the Second Amendment, can be abruptly reshaped. So buckle up. We're watching the American constitutional system fracture, reconstitute, and perhaps tilt in ways we never imagined. Every tweet, every court filing, every procedural footnote from here on could shift everything. And now, I invite you, before you race to the comments, hit that subscribe, and like if you value seeing content that cuts through media spin. Your engagement is how YouTube knows this video matters rather than burying it in an algorithm graveyard. Comment below, what part of this emergency order shocked you most? The procedural overreach? The local chaos? The possibility of a permanent emergency doctrine? I read every comment. Thank you for sticking with me, and yes, the final revelation was meant to leave you unsettled. This is the moment we realize how fragile constitutional order can become overnight by a stroke of judicial pen. Before you go, don't just watch, take action. Hit subscribe right now and smash that like button, because what's happening with this Supreme Court order could reshape your rights forever. When you engage, you help this message reach more people, and you tell YouTube that truth still matters. Drop a comment below and tell me, what part of this shocked you most? I read them all, and trust me, the next video dives even deeper into what they're not telling you. So stay alert, stay free, and make sure you're subscribed, because what's coming next will change everything.